Welcome to this business meeting of the Board of Education. The public may submit comments in writing to boe@wcps.k12.md.us. The comments will be distributed among us, and we have a one and a half item agenda. But before we do that, I'd like to say that we are called to order, we have a quorum, and say the pledge. So if you would stand, please. Daphne, in your honor, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. We have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Approved. Okay. Our one item of new business is an approval for a donation. Mr. Prue.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Good afternoon, members of the board. Dr. Wilcox and I today are requesting approval of the donation in the amount of $45,360 from Creekbound Farms and Botanica Enterprises for sod and its installation at the Boonesboro High School Stadium.
Do I have a motion?
President Zentmeyer, I move to approve a donation of $45,360 from Creekbound Farms, $23,360, and Botanical Enterprises for $22,000 for sod and its installation at the Boonesboro High School Stadium field.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope Jer is watching this. When we first spoke about this matter, he said, do you remember the Beowulf project I did in senior English? It was all about epic heroes, that strong, brave, courageous hero of noble birth that operated in a vast universe and overcame evil with good with the help of supernatural intervention. And my kids all remember that, even 20 years later. So I'm going to add hard work, generosity, and humility that define the epic heroes from Boonesboro who are doing this for our kids. Thank you so much. And before we leave the dais, since it is Daphne's last time here, I wanted to take a moment and recognize you, Daphne. Your outstanding service. You brought such a thoughtful and balanced voice to our discussions. You're always attentive to details and probably go to more meetings than all of us. You've never lost sight of the bigger picture. Your ability to consider all sides of an issue and speak with clarity has been so appreciated. Your confidence is truly impressive. You've reminded us how valuable a student voice is in the decisions that we make. And on behalf of the entire board, I want to say how proud we are of you. Very, very proud. Your advocacy for students, what you've accomplished here and in the classroom. We know you're headed for great things. Great things. Don't forget you have a home here.
I will not. Thank you so much.
You are our future, and I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? This meeting is adjourned down there. Welcome to this work session of the Washington County Board of Education. Any subject that you want to make a comment on, please do it in writing at boe@wcps.k12.md.us. Comments will be distributed to the board members. Our first discussion is with our infamous Chief of Communications Officer on migration update. You're on.
It's interesting to be in this seat for a change. So I thank you for having me. Good afternoon, President Zentmeyer, Dr. Savine, members of the board. I'm excited to share an update about our district website migration process. We set out with a clear primary goal for this initiative, making it easier for our families, staff, students, and community to find the information they need and stay connected with their schools. We focused on 4 key priorities for this redesign. First, I have to say this slowly, navigability, the ease of use, being able to navigate the website easy and find the information that you're looking for. Second, accessibility. With the redesign, we're taking a significant step forward in reaching website accessibility standards, making it usable for anyone on any device. We also wanted to empower our schools by giving them more control over their own online content. So each school will have their own site that mirrors the district website. And this way they can personalize their content to their learning community's unique needs while still also staying connected to the district. And finally, this site supports more effective communication with updated tools that help share timely, accurate information in a way that's clear and consistent. This project has certainly evolved, and it will continue to evolve as we launch and beyond. And it will be launched this summer. One of the top goals in redesigning our website, again, was to make it simpler and more efficient for users to find information they need without digging. That starts with streamlined menus, both at the district level and for each of our schools. Now, our current website is very departmentalized, which is convenient for staff members, but maybe not so much for a community member or a parent or someone who's new to the district, even prospective employees. So in website design, redundancy is a good thing. We're going to keep that departmental structure as the backbone of the website, but what you'll see more on the forward-facing part of the website is that you will find information that maybe we think of student services, but people think of the end product, of school counseling, of school health, of how to seek support for your student. So we actually have a global navigation for student support, where we'll have information about things like mental health services, lunch accounts, how to get IT support for a Chromebook. Now that will all link back to that departmental content, but that forward-facing information is something that's going to be more understandable for maybe someone who's new to the district. So we're looking forward to those changes. In addition, the consistent look and feel of the site across the district and across all of the schools will make it easier for stakeholders to find information they need, hopefully without having to call the school and save themselves some time. This is going to be especially helpful for parents who have students in multiple schools, or if parents switch schools within the district. They'll have the same organizational structure and know where they can expect to find the information that they need for things like calendars, school lunch menus, bus routes, that really key information that people want to be prepared for school. Now, these strategies are helping us build the site around a 2-click rule. That's kind of the industry standard, that you're able to reach the information that you set out to find within 1 to 2 clicks. We reviewed our website analytics to help us determine how to organize the site infrastructure around this information. We're also making sure that the website is user-friendly across all devices. So whether you're looking on a desktop computer, a tablet, a phone, literally in our publishing system, there are about 10 to 12 different ways that you can view the page to see how the content is going to be presented before it's published. So this is all a foundation for clear, accessible, and responsive communication, and we're going to continue to build on the structure, again, as it evolves and we figure out what we need to best do to meet our users. I talked about accessibility. The Web Content Access Guidelines, or WCAG 2.1 standards, are the federal standards. This, again, is another process that's going to evolve. We have a lot of PDF documents that live on our current website, and we've even moved some of them over to the new site. We're going to have to work with staff, with schools, to figure out how we make that information so it exists within the HTML code of the website that can be accessible, particularly by a screen reader, regardless of the abilities of the user. They can access and engage with that content. We're also improving readability and language translation features. So we have our content clearer and more accessible for our multilingual families and those who rely on those assistive technologies. So whether a parent's checking grades, whether a student is trying to find digital curriculum, we're going to remove barriers and make sure that everyone has clear access for those. This effort actually directly supports WCPS's initiatives for accessible digital learning tools, which has been a huge part of serving a diverse community. I mentioned that the redesign also gives us a consistent design and user experience across all of our school websites. So whether you're looking for a lunch menu for your elementary student, a school supply list, or you're checking on a high school student's graduation schedule, it's again going to be that same kind of experience that you have across each of the platforms. The redesign also makes things easier behind the scenes for our staff who's going to be managing and maintaining the content, because we're going to have the same content management system for each school. Currently, some of our schools have their own Google sites, their own Wix, Weebly sites, and if that person who maintains their content moves to another position or another role, the person who's coming into that role may not necessarily know how to update that content. So now we have one content management system that everyone will know how to update, and it'll be consistent across schools on the back end. We also recognize the unique identity of each of our schools. And so the new site allows us to have the consistency at a district and a school level, while again, meeting the school's unique needs for how they want to present to their learning community. And our hope is that this will help our stakeholders stay connected at the district level, but still hold on to the important school community characteristics as well. We do see this being a shot in the arm for having our website as a renewed communications tool. So there will be improved access to school updates, to calendars, key information, and users can quickly find what they need: school lunch menu, event reminder, a school support for their individual student, or academic resources. We're also seeing it being a conduit for stronger engagement between schools and families, so it's easier for parents, families to stay involved and informed with what's happening at their child's school. And for our staff, we're also introducing a dedicated intranet that will be a centralized space for our employees to find information specific to them, even their roles, tools, and resources. So when our staff is logged into this website with their WCPS credentials, they'll be able to access that information that's specifically for employees. This is an added benefit because it's not something that we have to have public-facing, that parents and community members are going to have to sift through to find what they're looking for. So as we prepare to roll out the new website this summer, the public information team is going to be leading staff training in the weeks ahead. We're going to walk school and office staff through the content management system so that they can easily and confidently manage the information that's on their sites. And also, again, adding that personal touch to how they want to be presented in their learning community. We're also planning back-to-school promotions. So we're looking at launching the site in July as a soft launch, and kind of taking that opportunity to work out any kinks that will be involved with that. And then when we get the school year started at the beginning of August, when we start really gearing up, that'll be the time that we really launch promotions so that people know where to find information, how they can stay informed by, for example, subscribing to calendars for their child's school, and really focus on how they can engage with the website. And then finally, within a year of the launch, we'd like to have a stakeholder audit. And this is a process where we would have staff, families, general community members who we would ask them to find specific content on the website, see how easy it is for them, see if we can hit our 1 to 2 click standard, and then also see if we need to make adjustments from there. So our feedback is going to be kind of our best tool to move that forward. So next, I'd like to give you a look at the new website. This is the district homepage, where you see we have the logo, our branding in the left corner. You'll see the news module that's on the side. If you hover over that, that will pop out our latest news and information. And then you'll see those graphic icons at the bottom. Those are where we'll put some of the key information. Our staff directory is a big hit that we found in our analytics. We're going to bring that back there. We can also put school supplies, bus routes, the calendar. Those are those one-click access where we know people are going to be looking for that information, and we're going to have it the easiest to locate for them. You can also see the icons in the top right corner. We have the language translation tool, a shortcut to go back to the district home site, and a place where you can find each of our schools. As you scroll down the page, we have these rotating tiles that we can, again, highlight more pertinent information that we're promoting district-wide here on the district site. And we also have our calendars. Those are already loaded and synchronized with our academic year calendar. And each school will have a calendar where they can add their school events and important dates to highlight to include there. I think we're struggling. There we go. We also have, each school will be able to personalize a by the number section. And this is somewhere that somebody would get an idea of just how big of a school system we are. We're highlighting here the number of meals that are served each day, the number of students in pre-K to 12, and the fact that WCPS is the largest employer in the county. And then you scroll down further to the footer where we have all of our social media icons and your general contact information as well. I wanted to give you a look at the schools menu. So when you hover over the school icon, you'll be able to quickly get to elementary, middle, high schools and our special programs. And you'll see this is the Rockland Woods Elementary School page. And again, you can see that it mirrors the school district look and feel. It'll have those same features with the panels, then the calendar. The schools actually have a social media plugin. We thought that would be most beneficial for them because our schools like to share quick and easily digestible content on social media. So they'll be able to connect those to their Facebook or their X accounts and also keep families engaged that way. So I hope that gives you an idea of where we're at in the process, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I would do a big applause, but it would be too loud. Having fought with the former website on many occasions and lost, I know I appreciate it. Anybody else have any comments?
I think it's wonderful, Erin. Thank you so much, because I've heard complaints, and I myself, like Dr. Zentmeyer, have had a few problems navigating. So thank you very much. This looks very exciting and promising.
Thanks so much, Erin.
Okay, thank you.
Now for 3 more of my favorite people. Dr. Willow, Helen Huffer, Adam Perry, welcome. You're going to tell us about From Classrooms to Communities.
Good afternoon, Dr. Zentmeyer, Mr. Gessford, members of the board, Dr. Svine. We are here today to talk to you about civics education. And there's really 2 parts to this presentation. The first part is what we're currently doing, and then changes for next year as well. And so you'll have the opportunity to sort of hear both today. To the right is Mr. Adam Perry, who is our supervisor of CTE, and to the left is Ms. Helen Huffer, who is our supervisor of counseling. So when we start and we first look at civics education, it really begins with the state standard around civics. And so this is the core standard that follows all the way through elementary, middle, and high. And for the listening audience, as a reminder, state provides standards, but it's our role as a local school system to then develop the curriculum and the materials that we're using around the standard. And so that's what we do. So just as a reminder why civic education matters, what is it that we're trying to instill in our students? Really that lifelong learning of being a productive citizen, right? And so some of the things we talk about, voting, being involved in your community, understanding what's happening, civil discourse. What that means for us is, being able to understand both sides of an issue, but being able to have a conversation and coming to solution around the differing viewpoints of you pick the topic. And so obviously there's a connection throughout this to our strategic plan. I'm not going to read all of that, but as one of the things that we consistently heard as we were developing the strategic plan from our business partners and our parents was the idea around civics education. And so we're in a overall pretty good place, but there are, again, things that we need to improve on. So civics education actually begins in pre-K, and we go pre-K through second grade. What are our big ideas? What are the things that we're trying to teach students? Obviously, this is age appropriate, but the responsible citizenship begins with understanding our roles, rights, and responsibilities in family, because that's where most students understand this idea of citizenship. It starts with family at home, and so making that connection. You can see some of the essential questions that start to appear in pre-KK. Again, there are more. These are just some of the highlights that go around what it means in terms of for each of those grade levels. And then the next is grades 3 through 5. And again, same concept. How do we make a difference in our community? What does it mean to be living and learning in the land of the free? Again, that's strategic plan, connections, supporting student success, community engagement. So when you're thinking from the primary grades to into upper elementary, you're really beginning to think about going from family to the idea of community.
So when we get to middle school social studies, the window for that kind of broadens out. What we're looking for students to do is have a little bit more global awareness and start moving them in the direction of becoming a responsible citizen. So we look at 6th grade, it's a broader lens. We're looking at ancient history, so ancient to medieval history, to kind of set the foundation for what political viewpoints are and where our society and how our society has grown. When we get to 7th grade, the beam of that narrows, and we start looking at things more globally. So we're looking at different cultures and different political systems, because the goal there is to put us in a spatial awareness of where is the United States, both geographically, and where we fit from a political system. When we get to 8th grade, then the beam really starts to narrow down on the United States itself. So we're looking at colonialism all the way through to the Industrial Revolution. And we're looking at events and people and examples of what responsible citizenship is and how can people become politically engaged. When we move to high school, then that beam narrows a little bit more. We're finishing up with U.S. history. We're looking at basically Industrial Revolution to the present, looking again at people and past events and examples of what responsible citizenship are. But a lot of that's geared towards prepping them for the deep dive into 10th grade, which is the United States government class. And in that, they're going to look at federalism, separations of checks and powers, the concept of what their role will be as a citizen as they move into the adult age and they become a voting member of our society, and how do they engage politically at a local, national, and state level.
So up to this point, you have heard something that every student receives, elementary, middle, high school. Then we have additional opportunities. These are what we would call engagement opportunities. So the Americanism essay, and that's sponsored by the American Legion. And not everyone understands, all right, so what does that mean, Americanism essay? So I went back and I looked at this year's question that students had the opportunity to answer. What does America the Beautiful mean to me regarding veterans and our military? So that's an example of again, different theme each year, but an example of what the essay might include. Last board meeting, we recognized our winner for If I Were a Mayor for a Day essay contest. And again, I think there were over 1,400 applications that went into that competition. Of course, we have Student Government Association. A number of you have joined us at the SGA events, the different meetings that are held here. We have We the People. So We the People is really big at Boonesboro. It has been involved in a club at club level at other schools. It's one of those that, again, it takes a teacher that's dedicated to it and then a group of students that want to take it. You can run it as an after-school club, but it also can be a class that's offered during the day. And again, that just comes down oftentimes to student enrollment numbers, staffing, and deciding whether the school will run it during the day or have it as an after-school type club. And then we do not have a student page every year, but that is an opportunity that we promote where we have high school seniors that have the opportunity to serve with the Maryland General Assembly. It is a wonderful opportunity for our students. The challenge is often getting to Annapolis on a consistent basis while still being involved in your sports, your clubs, your band, your orchestra. And so again, just sometimes geographically that can be a challenge for some of our students, but it is something that we've had in the past and a number of students have found it to be very helpful and beneficial.
Thank you. The topics on career or counselor lessons include academic, personal, social, and career lessons that we do in per-COMAR kindergarten through 12th grade. We do teach some lessons in pre-K alongside teachers. Those lessons are a little shorter based on developmental level. So a lot of the topics that we cover are emotions, how do you understand your own emotions, how do they play a role in conflict resolution, those kinds of things. In the career, we're exploring in elementary and middle school and really having students understand who they are in terms of their strengths and their skills and their interest in those kinds of things. Also, beginning in 6th grade, we work collaboratively with our career coaches who assist in assessments through our Naviance program for all students in 6th through 12th grade, but that begins in 6th grade for those students. And then in high school, it's more about future planning at that point in time, really taking in those last 4 years and honing in on their interest and their skills and how they're doing academically and helping them achieve all the graduation requirements and making a solid plan for when they graduate. And again, we collaborate with our career coaches in doing so and using Naviance as a platform for understanding skills and interest, goal setting, resume writing, those kinds of things. And then our career coaches also work with students on job interviews and going out and exploring real world careers in our community. And then student service learning has a component in terms of responsibility and community service to community needs. We're required to have 75 hours for graduation. 60 of those hours are embedded in 4 classes in our curriculum. And then those coursework and the curriculum tie-ins and connection to community agencies lead them to do their 15 hours independently out in the community with some other partner organizations that we have. And then we also have our positive behavior intervention and supports program and character counts program. So PBIS is what it's known as in all of our elementary and middle schools. And that helps provide a framework for school climate and culture. It helps teach responsibility and respect, teaches it in varying areas of the school. So different, expectations for the cafeteria versus being in a classroom. How do you walk in a hallway? Those kinds of things. And then character counts is in all of our elementary schools. And that is based on the 6 pillars. And so we work closely with our Washington County Character Counts Coalition, and they provide some additional support and some awards for our elementary students who are demonstrating that. In each school in May, we hold a huge ceremony, and then there's also a scholarship for high school students who demonstrate those skills as well.
So to this point, we've covered typically what students will receive in their core area, plus the supplemental lessons that they receive from their counselors. Over the summer, most of the summer is spent on updating curriculum and preparing for the upcoming school year. And we bring in teachers, administrators, staff. And part of what we do this time of the year, and honestly throughout the year, but more important now, is looking at what our current challenges are. This does not represent what we're going to go into, all of our challenges, but these are some major challenges that we're facing. And the first one probably will come to no surprise, is this idea of digital citizenship. And so that's a word that's often thrown around. What is digital citizenship? And so what we're looking to really address here is how students navigate the digital world. So if you think about the amount of screen time and how they think, how they engage using different platforms. And so what does that look like? And so there are really, if you look, 5 areas that we focus in on digital citizenship: managing screen time, the ability to evaluate digital content. Not everything on the internet is true. The idea of how you build diverse perspectives, promoting kindness, right? Even when you don't necessarily agree with someone else's viewpoint. How do we engage in using technology to collaborate and solve real world problems? And then what are the risks of the digital world, right? And so we actually start this in elementary school. Because there's no surprise, our students have access to digital devices at home. Of course, we have our Chromebooks, but very different with the level of filters we have in place in our school system versus what a student might have access at home. And so this has been actually taught as part of our library media curriculum. So our library media specialists teach this, but what we were finding is that's not enough. And so we started to also embed this into our social studies curriculum at elementary. And then the conversation came, well, we've got to go more than just beyond elementary, we've got to continue it. So starting next year, this will also be part of social studies at the middle school, and perhaps even some parts of ELA to be determined, where we can continue that conversation around what it means to be good digital citizenship. Another challenge is what we hear oftentimes in the career technical education. And so I want Mr. Perry to talk a little bit about this idea of workforce readiness around some of the soft skills.
Thank you. So one of the big things we heard from our business partners this year was that students were lacking in soft skills. So communication being one, punctuality being another, the ability to know how to collaborate with their peers, colleagues, but also to ultimately problem solve through issues. And we have that currently embedded in our career research development completer, but not everybody goes through that completer. So we realized we need to do a little bit more to promote that. So starting this year, coming up, what we're going to do is embed those skills in lessons in our 6th grade tech ed class, our 7th grade tech ed class, and our 8th and 9th grade FOT classes. And the goal is that we'll start them basically at 6th grade, and then we'll continue to build that out through their CT completers as they move through high school. And in addition to that, we've got our pre-program electives, and one of those is going to be business communications. And the concept of that is teaching, how do you talk to your boss? How do you talk to your colleagues? If you're going to write an email, you can't start it with the word bruh. That's not a professional process. And so it's really just building on that continually, so that from age basically 6th grade to 12th grade, we've spent the time to help build that. And hopefully in the end, we're shifting that needle.
And then the last initiative is really one of the things that came up, and I think part of this was in the strategic plan, but I also believe some of this came up in our C&I conversations around student understanding of local history. So, we just went through social studies curriculum where you get to understand state and national, but what do we have that really helps students understand local history, meaning our county? And so a new course that we're writing this summer that we hope to pilot as associate superintendent, I'm allowed to pilot for 1 year course and then ask you for approval, is really this idea of understanding our county history, but also a concept where you also get to look at present challenges and come up with potential solutions. So we're piloting this at Clear Spring High. It's an elective. Why Clear Spring? To be clear, it's a school that could benefit from one more elective. If it goes well there, then we would take this to the CNI committee, and it would be something that could be offered in all of our schools in the 26-27 school year. This is a 90-day course, so it's a semester course that then can be, so if I had to take world history, I could take this as well. It would allow more students the opportunity to potentially take it. So the work this summer will be on developing this curriculum, and then obviously we will be taking it to curriculum and instruction for a review. I think we're available if there are any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, the second round of applause is from our founding fathers. The civics thing is really great. I always worry about kids being online too much, so that if you can just make it 2-click like Aaron just did, that would be great. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Was probably one of them that brought this to your attention. I wanted to see a little bit more focus on this. So I'm glad to see that you're really embedding a lot of this for next year. I do have a question on the counselor lessons. It says here, all students receiving school counseling lessons. What is that, like a class, or is that, or you're just going to pull somebody out and go, here's what we need to talk to you about today?
That's a great question. So we provide counseling lessons to all students in elementary and middle school 1 time per month per class. So they make rounds, the counselors teach in every classroom, the teacher's classroom, 1 time per month in elementary and middle. And then high school, it's quarterly. So they're going into classrooms quarterly and teaching a lesson. Usually about 30 to 45 minutes is the lesson time. And then they'll do check-ins with particular classes for particular topics that they need at the high school level.
Okay, because that was my question is, if it's just a one-on-one or if it's an actual class. I think the actual class is really what I was looking for to see a little bit more. So good, I'm glad to see that. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you going to stay here?
I am.
Okay. Summer school.
Well, good afternoon again. Joining me at the table is Mr. Dan Fowler, who is our supervisor for school management. Board members, the summer school program, many of you are probably familiar with, but this presentation was set up also not just for you, but the listening audience to have a better understanding of the structures of summer school, who's eligible, the cost, and then how we will evaluate whether it was successful over the summer. I do want to start by thanking Mr. Fowler. He has done some really impressive work working with our principals, working with the curriculum team to develop this in a timely manner and to be able to advertise it to our community. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to him to start.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Willow. First, to start sharing, or I'd like to start by sharing that our elementary school program, just a general overview, we're going to target, or we're planning on targeting about 10% of our student population. It's a very strategic target for students that have identified gaps, learning gaps in both ELA and math. We've designed 2 distinct 2-week sessions for our students, one of which is primary and one of which is for intermediate students. Each day includes 70 minutes of focused instruction in both ELA and math. Students will be grouped based on either their grade level or specific academic needs, allowing a more tailored instructional approach. And then our staffing model maintains about a 12-to-1 ratio, give or take, depending on how many students apply or are registered at each site. We're going to use both a whole group and a small group model for each session, for each primary and intermediate session. And then within that model, teachers will decide how best to access and utilize the curriculum to match the instructional needs of the students that are there in their program. So for logistics and budget, we have 16 elementary school sites, and it will be running from July 7th to July 31st, so the 4 full weeks in July. Breakfast and lunch will be provided at every school site, so students will have access to meals for both breakfast and lunch. And we will have transportation. In the summertime, generally, the way that transportation is routed is we use hub stops, so community stops within each school community so that parents can access easily the transportation to and from the schools. So our budget for transportation is about $85,000 is what we've budgeted for transportation. $170,000 from the general fund, with some schools who utilize community schools funding will be pulling from some of that funding to help support their summer program. For evaluation purposes, we will be using 2 assessments in math, a pre-assessment and then a post-assessment, and then we'll be using DIBELS and CAPTI to monitor student progress and evaluation in ELA for elementary. For middle school, this is site-based, or I'm sorry, this is regional-based. Middle school is going to focus on about 200 students, again, that have identified learning gaps in ELA and math. The program will run 4 weeks, the same 4 weeks that we're running high school and elementary school, July 7th through July 31st. And that time will run about 8:45 to 12:15 p.m., and that's generally student time. We kind of mirror, because this site, the site for this, and on the next slide, you'll see that this site is at the ILC, so very close to South High, and as Dr. Willow will kind of discuss high school a little bit here in a few minutes, we'll share buses with the high school students. So it will run, give or take, about 8:45 to 12:15. Instruction will include 90 minutes each in ELA and math, so students will receive both ELA and math instruction. The grouping of students is based on grade levels, so we will have separate sections for rising 6th graders, rising 7th graders, and rising 8th graders. The instructional model includes 90 minutes of ELA and math, like I said, again, using both a whole group and small group format, and student groupings based on grade level, but we will also maintain that 12-to-1 ratio that we're also maintaining in elementary school to keep that consistent. Like I had shared, the Innovative Learning Center will house our regional program. It'll run those 4 full weeks in July, like elementary school and like high school. Breakfast and lunch will be provided. We'll be sharing busing with as much as possible high school students, but we'll also be accessing hub stops. The transportation cost will be about $50,000 for our middle school program, with about $70,000 for staffing needs from the general fund for our instructional staff. The evaluation, again, for math will be 2 assessments, a pre and a post assessment. And for ELA, we will utilize CAPTI assessments like we will for our intermediate students in elementary.
And high school programming is traditional high school programming. And so our target audience are really any student who's failed courses, or maybe a student who needs to take a course for original credit. Sometimes that might happen because there's 2 courses the student wanted or needed within their schedule, and they were only able to schedule 1, and they're trying to get ahead, and they want to take a summer course to meet a prerequisite or to get something on their schedule that they cannot take. Most of the time, it's going to be students taking repeat credit. So what's the difference? Original credit, as I said, is for a student who will take the course for the first time. Repeat is for someone who has previously taken the course and did not earn a passing grade. For summer school right now, we have 7 courses running for original credit and 17 courses that are running for repeat credit. The time is 8:45 to 2:45, so high school is always longer, again, due to the amount of time and course content. And students have the opportunity to earn 1 original credit, meaning that if they take an original credit course, that will be the only thing they take during the entire time at summer school, or 2 repeat credits. And that's always sort of been the case, again, because you have already taken a course. The repeat credits focus on those core concepts. In some cases, you're looking at a student and see that there might only be particular units instead of the whole course that they need to focus on. And so that's the idea behind the repeat credit piece. State testing also occurs at the high school level, again, depending on whether the student needs it for graduation. As a reminder, biology and government assessments count for 20% of the final grade, and students are required to take the algebra and English assessment in order to graduate. So that is something that's a little newer. Historically, we have not had to use too much summer for MCAP testing. Summer graduation is set July 31st at South Hagerstown High School. And again, pretty consistent here. The dates, breakfast and lunch, hub transportation. The transportation budget is always higher for high school because of the number of students. And then the same holds true with staffing. So what we really were hoping to do here is this is really what we see as part one of what will be a part two when we come back and share results of how many students actually attended, how many saw progress from using the assessments, how many earned the repeat credit or original credit. But we also thought this might be helpful to give an idea of where we see the budget for summer school. Please know these are estimates. That's why the numbers are not very formulated right down to the dollar and cents. When we come back, we can actually report out what those final numbers are. I think we're available for questions.
I have one. Well, I have several. So how does the registration process work for summer school? Are teachers reaching out to parents and saying, we recommend your student to come to summer school? Is that for elementary, middle, and high school?
So it looks a little bit different for each level. For elementary school, it's very targeted. The staff reaches out, whoever's in charge, I think the school principal, the administrative staff, maybe lead teacher, identifies those kids. And they've probably been on their radar throughout the year of receiving instructional help. They reach out to the parents with opportunities. They have kind of their round one of invites. They get an idea of how many kids would accept the invitation. If they have some extra spots open that their budget allows them for, they reach out to kind of their round two invites. In middle school, it's a little bit more mirrored to the high school, so they're very similar. Middle school, the school assistant principals work with the counselors, and they identify kids, but they send home almost like an invite where the parents sign up and essentially say, I consent that, I give consent for the school counselor or the school staff to sign my kid up for summer school because we've been invited. Then the counselor will then register their student into our summer school program. The registrars then take that information and register into their homerooms for summer school. High school, it's a little bit more complex. It's similar to that. The parent kind of signs off on the consent, and through this consent, they say, I understand the behavior policy, I understand the attendance policy, I understand that it's running these days. The school counselor then registers for the specific classes. We track those daily, and they are, I mean, we've been tracking them, pretty much regularly over the last 4 weeks, to which we open up sections and try to balance the number of students with the number of teachers we have so that we can provide as many opportunities for kids as possible. Then the registrars take that information and schedule them into classes. So it's a little bit different, but very similar throughout each grade level or throughout each level. Elementary, a little bit more, I want to say, facilitated by the school as opposed to the facilitation process starts with the parent in middle and high school.
I have 2 more questions. So I really like the fact that in elementary school, we are meeting the child where they are and helping them from there. Is there a reason that that's not continuing into middle school?
So I think that we are in middle school. It's a very kind of similar curriculum in establishing a curriculum or having curriculum and doing a whole group lesson, but then small group instruction as well. So I think middle school is actually a little bit more mirrored instructionally, I think, if I'm speaking correctly, to elementary, as opposed to high school where it's content specific with the course. So there is some supplementary instruction in middle school, just like there is in elementary school.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to expand on that.
All right, and my last question was, I was under the impression that we were doing summer school at each individual elementary school, and now I see that there's 16. What are the schools, so that people know?
They are every one. So because of certain constraints or building constructions, we've had to kind of merge some sites together. So there's some schools where there might be 2, at max, I think 3 schools, based on numbers and based on teaching staff that we can support in those buildings. But every single elementary school is hosting a summer school. It just might not be at their specific location because of certain circumstances.
It would be interesting to find out how many kids we reach out to, how many kids accept the invitation, and how many kids pass.
Yeah, I think that we can provide that information, especially the way that we are tracking applicants. Right now, I can say off the top of my head, just in general, because I was looking at high school, like we have over 400 kids enrolled in high school right now, specifically in classes ready to go, ready for registrars to register into classes. But I think the way that we are inviting students, I think we can easily provide that information.
Dr. Willow, how many of the students that take summer school, high school students, are getting their credits that they need to graduate at summer graduation?
So that is typically the senior number. Do you have that off? It usually ranges around 40, 50 students. I'm going to ask Dr. Wilcox. Yeah, about 40, 50 of our high school students typically are using that in order to graduate.
I was also wondering, what courses are being offered specifically for high school? Is it based off of who is enrolling and what they need, or?
It's mostly your core classes. And if you think about what I mean by that is, your 4 English classes in order to graduate, your 4 math classes, your science, your social studies. However, there is physical education. You do have some of the CTE courses that a student might need. This isn't where we would offer your advanced placement type courses just because there's not enough time in that short period to get through curriculum. So they tend to be, again, students who are there to repeat. Some students that want to get into Tech High and need to take an additional course, sometimes are included into the summer school numbers, or maybe somebody that couldn't get a course onto their schedule because of an IB program or an advanced program might want to take a course. But for the most part, it's going to be your core classes you need in order to graduate.
I had a parent who has a child in elementary school ask me about her kid going to summer school, and he does not have an identified gap, but we also know that a lot of times kids that age group don't have identified issues or disabilities or whatever it may be, call whatever you will, but sometimes they're borderline, and her child is doing well in school and not getting poor grades or marks or anything, but what she's seeing at home is a little different than what may be tested at school. And she asked if she could have her child go to summer school, but it seems like it's only the kids with the targeted or the identified gaps that we're allowing to go.
For now, yes. And again, looking at what was within the budget and trying to come up with a structure and a formula, if there was a desire in the upcoming years to increase that or do something different, or again, if we come back and we see that, looking at evaluation data or attendance data or grades, I think there's always the possibility of looking at a slightly different model or perhaps reallocating resources. But we had to start somewhere. And again, we were looking for students that we knew had already that identified gap in literacy and math to really get them prepared to hopefully start the year in a better place.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I know we, over the past couple years with the ESSER grants, we were doing a lot of stuff on our own with that money to kind of bridge those gaps a little bit. But do we also do something with the local YMCA to do something like that?
I think they may be supporting like before and after care type.
think
But it's not specific summer camps directed
No,
towards that?
I think, I don't want to speak incorrectly, but some of our schools that are using community school funding uses or may be using the YMCA as a wraparound service to extend their day beyond the half day of instructional time, to work with them in terms of a partnership to keep the kids there a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. I know this might take a little bit, but could you give me an idea of what a schedule for all three, the elementary, middle, and high school, what that is a vision of during that day? Because I'm seeing that 70 minutes for English language arts and 70 minutes for math instruction for an elementary student. I can't sit 70 minutes. And I'm just wondering, you know, what that looks like for a parent. Because I mean, if I'm a parent and I've got my son, I'm not going to let my son sit there for 70 minutes in a math class. I mean,
So that's the difference, as Mr. Fowler shared, between whole group and small group. So the idea is that while there may be some whole group, there's another staff member in the room working with you in a small group setting, isolating the skills that you need. And of course, you know, we try to embed it in a way that it's still fun for elementary, right? And so a lot of that is, we have amazing teachers, and some of that is, how do I make this fun every day, right? Because not everything in math or ELA, is maybe the most fun, right? And so that's just the reality. That's part of the art of teaching. And I think that's probably the structure that you see. That was the idea when we had ESSER funds, those high interest camps. How could you bring activities, but also make it so that they were learning literacy and math? It wasn't really just about camps. It was trying to find ways to embed fun into the learning and try to get a student to come back to school. Also, to your point, Mr. Evans, you know, it was also getting kids to come back with ESSER funds for the first time after they'd been out. So, Mr. Gesford, what I don't envision is a student sitting there for 90 minutes while a teacher is just talking with them. There is, the way we're designing the curriculum, yes, it's math and ELA focused, but the idea is small group, large group, keep you engaged, moving, so that it's not just sit and get.
okay, so, and I hear what you're saying, but I'm still trying to vision that whole morning, or, I mean, because it's definitely going to be a morning. So kind of give me what that, maybe you're not the person to tell me, maybe it's Mr. Fowler that could tell me what that looks like for a parent.
So if I'm sending my elementary child to summer school, you know, they arrive on a bus or a car, however they get there. They first start with breakfast, a little morning routine. They would come in. If they do ELA first, what it might look like is 20 minutes of a whole group activity, something high interest. I don't have the curriculum right here in front of me, but something high interest in terms of ELA instruction. From there, if I have 12 students in my class, I might have 3 groups of 4. 2 of my groups might be working on something independently, and that something is probably related to something that we had learned about in that 20 minutes of whole group.
Okay.
I, as a teacher, might be with 4 of those students, isolating reading skills, teaching them those isolated reading skills while there's some self-directed learning going on, and I might rotate through those 4 different groups. So there's that face-to-face time with the teacher for 20-minute whole group, and then maybe a 25-minute small group, while then some other time I'm working with classmates on some very student-driven learning projects, pieces, and it looks very similar in math as well. So a lot of movement. It's structured, but yet kind of flexible enough that students are learning on their own. They're getting direct instruction, but they're also getting instruction on the isolated skills that they need.
So middle school? Typically the same?
Very similar.
Okay.
So they will show up and it's about the same time frame. The only difference there is that there's 2 periods. So they'll travel in their same groups. So the way that we had registered school staff register their students is there's a group of 12 students per section. And if I have ELA first, my ELA class is going to look very similar to what I explained in elementary. Then at the end of that 90 minutes, we'll switch, and I will go to math, but then the 6 students to the math class that I'm going to is going to go to the ELA teacher that I just came from. And then we'll eat lunch. There's a little rec period for summer school, for middle school. We thought it was important for kids to get a little bit of play around lunchtime. So we'll do a little bit of rec with lunch before they leave for the day.
So for me, when we voted on this summer school, and I think a few other board members, we wanted this to be more meaty and not just an after-school summer program where they go and have a lot of fun. I mean, we want them to learn and have fun, but we also want them to come out of summer school ahead than where they were if they were behind. And I think that's what I'm really wanting to see, with this summer school, because in the past, it just seems like it was more of a playtime, and some parents use it as, I don't want my kid around, so let's send them to school. I really think we want it to be a learning, because our kids are behind, and we need to use every avenue for those young students that need the extra. And on the note of the invite, I'm not so sure I would send an invite to a middle school parent, because I think we really need to tell them, your child needs to be here. We need them here because we're going to lose them even further going into high school. High school, I get it. These kids are more independent, and I get it. But we have to be the leader, and the middle school student really needs that guidance, to get them through that time, because middle school is a tough time, and I think that if we could really do away with the invite and more say of, we need you to be here, would be so much better for those parents, because I think sometimes our parents really need that structure from us to say, you need to step up and be a parent, but we need to step up and have your child here so we can get them caught up, because they tend to really get laxed in middle school and they lose focus. And so I would really encourage you to maybe really evaluate that system to more of an invite. I'm not an invite, but more of a, we really need you to be here so that we can move forward. But, I'm really looking forward to a little, more structure and see how this works out and see what our results are. I hope that is. And one final question. I know that you said the budget, Dr. Savine, this is a question for you. I know that you're going to work with your staff, and I think everything's been rounded up to odd numbers. Do you feel we're going to hit the budget with this number? Do you feel like you're going to be within budget, or if 400 students, was that for high school? Was that going to be, is that normal? Do you think we can really meet our numbers?
That we will be within budget. It's really early to determine, but we anticipate based on our numbers right now, we will be within budget.
When would we find out what that looks like at the end of the summer and what our budget, if we hit it or we were over? When would we see those numbers?
Probably end of August, early September, just because of payroll running behind. I would say I'd feel more confident, and we'd look at, the transportation cost, all of that. I think we'd have a better picture for that.
Do you think that we could maybe in October have a report on that budget?
Yeah, we were planning to come back and not only and talk about the cost of, but also the results, the
That'd be great.
attendance, and typically we have, when we have had summer school in the past, that's been a report to the board. I want to say September, October-ish, just so that we then finalize the grades and all of that, and make sure that our data is accurate when we come back to you.
I'm just hoping that this program this year is a lot different and looks different than it was in the past. And that's what I'd like to see what the results are. So
Yeah.
I've been here 11 years and I've seen this, and it just doesn't seem as exciting. It's more of a, a program, a school thing. I want to see it more meaty, and I'm hoping that we have the results for that.
President Zentmeyer, to Mr. Gesford's comments and desire, this summer school has been planned differently with a, as you heard, strong academic focus. As was referenced in previous years with ESSER dollars, it was more of a club type of setting, high interest activities. This is a much different summer school experience focused on academics, in particular ELA and mathematics. Dr.
And
Willow?
I may not have done a good job explaining that. That was the point I was trying to make, is that when we had ESSER dollars, it was about bringing students back into a building, right, that had been out for, in some cases over a year. We just wanted to get them back, socialization. So that was part of the idea of the camps, engage you, bring you in. This is our HQIM materials. This is our curriculum. It is personalized around math and literacy, and that's the idea behind those small groups that Mr. Fowler was talking about, because bringing in 200 students, yeah, they have some similar gaps, but they could also be very different gaps. And so that's the idea of what you need may be very different than what I need. And so I think you'll see that. My concern is finding the balance. And I just have to say, as a former middle school principal, finding the support and making sure middle school students come every day. High school, the incentive is there. I need it in order to graduate. Elementary students tend to be more supportive with parents. Middle school, to be completely upfront, will be one that we'll have to look at very closely, because it can be very difficult sometimes to get our middle school students to engage. And so that'll be a really interesting data point. And if we do not get it right, then the idea would be, all right, how can we do this differently? What feedback do we hear from our teachers, from you, from the community, so that when we come back into this, we have a different approach to get it right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Prue and team, Mr. Rollins, Mr. Burton, Mr. Criswell on the facilities master plan.
Good afternoon, Dr. Zentmeyer, members of the board. Here with the facilities team to give you a run-through on the educational facilities master plan. Once again, we always kind of start you with, go ahead, Jen. This is really the first in the trilogy of facilities books, beginning with the educational facilities master plan, moving into the capital improvement plan, which you'll see in September, and the comprehensive maintenance plan that you'll see in October. This, of course, is our roadmap for how we manage our facilities in terms of what does the community look like, what are the needs for buildings within the community, what is the status of our current facility inventory, what does it look like, what conditions it's in, what does enrollment look like, and we'll talk to you a little bit today about the enrollment projections, how they align to the Maryland Department of Planning, and how that then impacts other future building decisions we may make. Cannot remind you enough that this report is updated annually, so we will be, back every year. So ultimately, if something changes in a 6 to 12 month period, we have the opportunity annually to adjust that. While it's a 5-year plan, and we even think even further out with some of our systemics out to 10, but you can see that ultimately we're back to you on a regular basis. Reminding you again a little bit about the assets that we maintain. Board of Education owns and operates on nearly 1,100 acres of property, and under roof we have nearly 3.5 million square feet of building under roof. So it's a substantial amount of property we're working through. We think about the current infrastructure and what ideal preventative maintenance is. We show you this chart annually. One of the things we thought about as we think about the plan of buildings, and we've had a lot of conversation over the last number of years about consolidation, less buildings, but larger buildings. Part of that is really to work down this preventative maintenance schedule, that if you have less buildings, you need to refurbish them or replace them less often because you have less buildings. So instead of needing one a year, you get down to 0.8 of a building a year, on average. I mean, just that thought process ultimately is it helps not only the Board of Ed, but also the county commissioners, and ultimately our taxpayers support the infrastructure that is the Board of Education. You can see potential expected life cycle for buildings, roofs, boiler systems, chillers, HVAC systems, and so forth. You see that on the screen.
Okay, so the EF&P is made up of 5 chapters, the first 4 containing data that supports the 10-year plan that we present in the 5th chapter. Chapter 1 contains an overview of Washington County Public Schools goals and standards as they pertain to facilities and the policies and regulations that have been developed to implement those goals and standards.
As we move on to Chapter 2, that is the community analysis, and this chapter is completed in accordance with requirements set forth by the Maryland Department of Planning and the Interagency Commission on School Construction and the required elements that they have listed in COMAR. As we go through that particular chapter, it really starts off with kind of a macro view of the county as a whole. It is consistent with the current Washington County Comprehensive Plan. We go through and we provide a map of the major developments within the county. Those are developments that would have over 7 units or 7 dwelling units listed within them. We provide all the active, inactive, nearly completed developments, and then we come back to these developments in each of the subsequent high school service areas a little later on in the chapter. In the early phase of this particular chapter, we also go through populations of the county and the municipalities. We provide the current adopted county pupil generation rates, which is consistent with the adequate public facility ordinance, which for those of us following along, of course, that was a topic of discussion today at the county commissioner meeting. We've been in constant communication with staff over at the county regarding this. We are leaving the adequate public facility ordinance as it is right now in this current 2025 educational facility master plan, but we do expect to modify this particular chapter in next year's educational facility master plan we bring to you. I believe the commissioners this morning are considering it for maybe January of next year, a revision to that particular process, and we will keep the board apprised of that as it moves forward. In addition, we track new housing starts. We work with the county and municipalities to monitor this. We provide new construction updates all the time to the facility committee for the board. We take that information and we go to each of the 7 high school service areas, and we provide a map that gives more detail on the developments within each of those service areas, along with a table that provides the current status of each of the developments. All of this is completed in conjunction with the county and the municipalities. In fact, we always joke when I talk to the towns and the cities, and it's my annual call, and we always go through and update the charts and go from there.
Okay, in Chapter 3, we have a detailed evaluation of the WCPS building inventory. This includes an annual assessment of the physical and functional characteristics of each building, along with the general inventory of the size, seat capacity, building systems, and other things that contained in each building. Physical characteristics we judge are evaluated on the bricks and mortar, various mechanical, electrical, plumbing, life safety systems, all those things that make the building run. Functional characteristics are aligned with how the building works as a school, the quality of the spaces that are needed to provide a high-quality educational environment. Each school then is evaluated and assigned an overall ranking based on the evaluation of those factors.
As we move into Chapter 4 of the document, this is where we go into the enrollment data or enrollment projections for each of our facilities. This process actually starts back in January of the year, where we start talking to our consultant, Public Pathways Incorporated. We review the enrollment data that we share with the board every September, October with the official enrollment. We start looking at geographical information system data. We utilize a cohort survivorship method process to go through and create enrollment projections for the next 10 years. Obviously, as we move out in the enrollment projections, they become less accurate as you move out beyond year 1. But this process involves working with CES staff, going to each of the principals at the respective schools to see if there's anything that we need to be aware of, anything that they're seeing at the school level that we can take back to our consultant and consider. We talk to the counties regarding developments. we create several different versions of the enrollment projections. The first version is the K through 12 enrollment projections that are provided to the Maryland Department of Planning. That has to be within 5% of the projections generated by the Maryland Department of Planning. This was submitted to Maryland Department of Planning in the end of March. We were within the 5%, and a copy of that was shared with the board. The other projections we create are what we call our full-time equivalent enrollment projections, which includes pre-kindergarten students. And then last year we had a little bit of a change in our reporting where the state no longer recognized the Boyd J. Michael Technical High School as a comprehensive high school and requested us to count those students at their home facilities. So within the Educational Facility Master Plan, when you look at the school-by-school projections, which is shown on the state form provided on the left, it will not match the two-page full-time equivalent projections for high school that we provided you on the right. The reason for this is we actually keep two sets of books. The numbers all equal out the same. We provide the state report to the state as they have requested it, showing the kids at their home schools. To our board, to the county, to all the municipalities, we show those students actually counted at Boyd J. Michael Technical High School because that is where they are physically counted. So the numbers all equal out, but we do make that distinction, and I think I made that same distinction this past fall when I presented the September enrollment to everybody. As we move through Chapter 4, we give a little bit of analysis of how we come up with the enrollment projections, and it's really a best guess method of the cohort survivorship method. We start with birth rates within the county. As you can see, of the 1,560 kindergartners that showed up this year, that was based on a birth rate 5 years ago from 2019, just prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw just over 1,700 births within the county. The past couple of years, we've been under that 1,700 mark, and if you follow that chart up, you can see that we used to see a lot more births within the county, but our enrollment's staying relatively flat. This year, we were around what we would call a 91.5% survivorship rate. Next year, we're a little bit more optimistic. We think we're going to be a little higher at around 94, which is what we saw last year. And this is part of the process we go through with our consultant. We see what trends are. We look at various housing developments. We look at jobs created within the area, a lot of different factors, and this is helping us create a little bit more of an accurate guess. It could still be off, but it is our best possible guess that we can come up with based on all the available data that we have. As we move through that, we take those projections by school and then by grade level. And within this chapter, we do create graphs shown on the right for the elementary grade level, where we can show that we are projecting slow but steady growth at our elementary levels for the next 10 years. We also have provided where we show the state-rated capacity of all our elementary facilities. The green line on the bottom represents 10% less for the local rated capacity. You'll see two little jogs in the state-rated capacity. The first jog is representative of the new Downsville Pike Elementary School that we're going to be building out front. We're proposing to provide that replacement school, closing two smaller schools, and even in that process, we're expecting 150 additional seats to be able to support the capacity growth within the county. As we move out a little bit further, you can see another bump, and that is proposed Phase 2 expansion at Jonathan Hager Elementary School, which we will discuss in the next chapter. As we move on to the middle and high school level, on the left, you can see the middle school enrollment that was recorded since 2020. We came down from 2019. We saw a little bit of a bubble go through the elementary school level. That came down and moved on to the high school grades. And as you can see, we have middle school enrollment being steady but slow growth as we move out. High school is going to see a little bit of a dip this year, stay kind of flat, but a little bit of a dip for really the next 2 years. And then we're going to start to see that kind of grow as well based on our current projected information. Looking at this coming fall, we expect to be up by about a total of 168 pre-K to 12 students. Now, our K to 12 number, our compensatory funding number, we expect to be closer to around 115 or so when we take the pre-K out of it. But we do expect to be up, or as some people may say, with 22,000 students, it could be flat. But that it is showing a slight increase. And then as we move out 10 years, we're expecting to continue to grow and see about 1,000 students, 1,200, 1,300 students more within the next 10 years based on the information that we have. Again, next year, this number could go down, it could go up. we're projecting students that haven't even been born yet. You know, we're projecting students that are going to be born from people that are graduating this year. So there's a lot of things that can change as we move forward in time, but this is based on a current economic climate that we're aware of.
So then, based on the data collected and evaluated in these first 4 chapters, Chapter 5 presents a 10-year plan of major facility needs. The plan focuses on the replacement and renewal of several facilities along with the ability to add seat capacity as needed. On the slide now you see 5, go back one, Chad, yep, sorry. The 5 projects major projects that we're looking at. Downsville Pike Elementary School, of course, is almost ready to bid, and hopefully we'll see it coming out of the ground right outside these windows here in a few months, and that's pretty exciting. We have on the plan, in addition to Jonathan Hager, to provide seat capacity in a growing area of the county, a project at Clear Spring Middle High School to renovate and replace 2 existing aging schools and add seat capacity as needed, and 2 elementary school replacement projects that will further help reduce the number of facilities with each new school replacing 2 existing aging schools, and also having the ability to add seat capacity there at those schools as warranted. Stepping back to the map of developments from Chapter 2 that Mr. Criswell previously reviewed, you can see that all of these projects would be built in the vicinity of developments that are planned or occurring and will be able to add seat capacity where it is most needed.
All right, so some information here on Downsville Pike Elementary that everyone's familiar with. The location, approximate location in the county highlighted on the slide here. And then on this slide here, some additional features of Downsville have a capacity of 688 students with an expanded core space to add an additional round in the future. The planned opening is in August of 2027 for the 27-28 school year. And the total estimated cost is a little over $51 million, and that includes the design, construction, and furnishing of the school for use. The funding for Downsville comes from a mix of state and local sources. It includes state and local capital improvement programs and the Built to Learn Act, and that's administered by the Maryland Stadium Authority. We want to thank the board for your approval of the tri-party memorandum of understanding at our previous business meeting, and we are happy to report that the Board of County Commissioners and the Maryland Stadium Authority both approved the MOU at their meetings today. Of the $32 million in state funding, a little over $19 million of that comes from the Built to Learn Act, and then $13 million from the state CIP, and the rest is funded locally, about $19 million.
Okay, the Jonathan Hager Elementary School Phase 2 addition was included in last year's plan, but we moved it forward in the schedule due to the need for seat capacity in this area. Again, the school is located in an area of active and potential growth and is currently slightly over capacity and projected to have continued enrollment growth. And it's also bordered by Salem Avenue Elementary School, which is also over capacity. A few months ago, Jeff and Chad and I met with the county CIP committee, and they expressed an interest in having Washington County Public Schools focus on capacity projects. So this is one of those. Jonathan Hager was originally planned and constructed with future expansion in mind. The core facilities, the cafeteria, gym, media center, those types of things were all designed to be able to accommodate a larger student population. And the building was oriented on the site to be able to accept a future addition. With continued residential development occurring in the areas surrounding the school, we believe this is the right time to bring this project forward for consideration. The addition is planned to add almost 400 seats to the school and an estimated 32,000 square feet of building area. The proposed schedule has the addition being ready for occupancy for the 28-29 school year at a cost of around $24 million in today's dollars. So I do want to acknowledge that this project is going to require an aggressive schedule and could require some forward funding by the board to hire an architect early next year in order to meet this schedule. The architect will be tasked with both planning and designing the addition and also providing a design for the installation for a cluster of temporary classrooms that will house students that may need to be displaced while construction occurs, along with needing the space because of the continued enrollment pressures. The temporary classrooms could also house redistricted students from Salem Avenue Elementary School or other neighboring schools who would attend eventually the new school with the addition.
depending on the outcome of the current redistricting effort that was charged by the board. So they're working on that as we speak. You can see on the slide the quick pace of the project. There's some concern whether or not the state or the county will provide funding in line with this time frame. Approval of this plan by the board, and what we're asking you to do is that we will include it in the capital improvement program too, and it will allow us to have discussions with both the state interagency committee and the county about the possible timing of funding. If the support of the proposed timing materializes, then we can move forward with this. If the support is there for the project, but at a slower pace, we can adjust the schedule in next year's EFMP, stressing what Jeff said in the beginning is every year we come back to you and we can adjust the plan.
Can I ask a question? So with the temporary relocatable classrooms, is that something that we will be able to use in the future?
Yes.
Okay, so for this project, it would kind of start and we would have to pay for them, but in the future, when we're doing things, we can relocate them.
Correct. The thought process behind it is we would install likely 3 2-classroom units. So each building would be able to house 2 classrooms, also with restrooms, so the students wouldn't need to come inside the bathroom for the restroom. We'd have sprinkler systems installed in to be able to cluster them a little bit closer based on the fire code. When the addition is done, these portable buildings could then be relocated to other buildings, either for enrollment pressures or future construction where we need to house students out of a building while we're doing renovations. And if nothing else, our inventory of portable classrooms is significantly aging, and we could always age out some of the older units and replace them with these units.
So, sorry, I'll piggyback on that then. So we would go and put in portables now, put in all the plumbing and electric and sprinkler and all that, just to tear it down and then put in something new? I mean, isn't that kind of seems like some extra work that might have some extra costs, unnecessary costs?
I mean, you have some staging costs. I mean, the challenge you have currently with Jonathan Hager is you've got a building that's nearing capacity, you're having housing growth in that area, and that by the time you get to the addition, if you do nothing else, if we do no other redistricting in the West End, the building is full, and you may need to relocate some existing students out of existing classrooms at the end of the building where the addition is going to go while you're handling some of the construction. So we do have some staging capabilities that need to happen with probably portable classrooms to even be prepared to handle the addition and handle the continued enrollment pressure that's coming. Further to that, and what the Facility Enrollment Advisory Committee is looking at is the continued stress on Salem Avenue that currently already has 4 portables, is full and is getting even more enrollment pressure than is Jonathan Hager, especially from Kilpatrick Woods. I always forget the name of that development. I got a brain block, I think, which is right there walking distance across the road from Salem Avenue, between Salem and Western Heights. If you can think about Marshall Street going out and Salem going out, it sits right in the middle of the two. So while, yes, there is additional cost, any place you're doing a renovation on site, the likelihood is you're going to need portables in a temporary structure. Putting sprinklers in is something that probably is best practice in any of our portables moving forward. And truthfully, as we think of, and guys, fact check me, when we think about where the fire code is now compared to where it was even 3 years ago, if buildings are within 30 feet of each other, they have to have sprinklers in them. So some of our existing portables that are clustered together don't have that. So by integrating the portable into those sprinklers, we set ourselves up to be able to move them in other locations to be a little bit more efficient with them, where we're really talking about, sure, there's setting them up on foundations and all of that cost, and then running utility to them for power, data, water and sewer. A little bit of my Massachusetts accent just can't kind of float out there. But that can all be vacated, can be planned to be vacated once, as part of the addition process when that's completed. Hope that's helpful.
And to look at renting units for a year or two?
You can rent them, but as we mentioned, with other potential construction, if we have a desire, and I think there's a desire in the community for us to do more renovations of existing buildings on site, we would have a use and a need to relocate these to other sites, or get rid of some of our aging units that we have that, have significant age on them. And we've done several refurbishments on some of the units over the years. But rental is an option.
Right, and to dovetail on what Jeff just said, I mean, it's important to note that whether or not the addition project moves forward per this schedule or it's delayed slightly, we need to bring these portable classrooms because of the enrollment pressure and possibly not only at Jonathan Hager, but at Salem Avenue and the whole redistricting.
I definitely don't question the need for them. It's just, it seems like that's not necessarily, and not that I know, I mean, I don't build stuff, I destroy stuff, but it just seems to me like that's not the most efficient way, so.
It's kind of the cost of doing business
Right.
in construction and the need to have a place to house the kids in a good learning environment without a jackhammer just on the other side of their wall, kind of thing. So we think that the portables alone, those 6 classrooms, 3 units would cost close to, with design and construction, including sprinkler required by the fire marshal and all, is in that $1 million range. So it's not an insignificant amount of money, but I mean, I think it's the cost of doing business, and we're going to need it regardless. So if it's a shorter time frame, if the addition were to move forward on schedule, it seems like more of a, did we have to spend that money? I understand what you're saying, but I think we have to do it regardless. That's our advice to the board to move forward that way.
Mr. Rollins, I just want to say one thing. I'm all for the portables because I was at Salem Avenue when you did the new school, built the new school around us. And they shoved everybody into the classrooms. We were so packed in there. And they tore down the wing and then they built a new one and then we had to all go. I mean, that was a big school too. And so they were blasting around us and they were digging around us and it was not fun. So the portables are a very good idea.
Thanks.
And you're talking about 120, 140 students, maybe sending them to a different school like you're doing with Clear Spring. That's not an option either.
Probably not in that area. Chad, can you think about the neighboring schools?
It's a little bit difficult based on the current enrollment pressures that we have at some of the neighboring schools. So right now, Clear Spring Elementary is over capacity. Morgansville Elementary is right at its state-rated capacity, and we're expecting another development, Collegiate Acres, for those of you that are aware of where that is located. That's starting another 124 or 100, I forget the number offhand. We just shared it to the facility committee for the apartments at that region. So we're expecting to see a little bit of more enrollment projection at Morgansville. Fountaindale is currently at its capacity with the magnet program and the proposed Fountainhead West development that's potentially coming in. Really what has propagated the consideration for Hager has been some of the additional developments, the McDade Farm and the Bostetter Farm coming forth, and we're starting to hear more and more traction of that coming. Of course, this school was designed to handle this. So one of the benefits of this proposal is that the core spaces at Jonathan Hager are set up to handle the additional student load. So really, we just need to add the classroom space, whether it's through the temporary classrooms for construction, but then once they're constructed onto the facility, they'll be able to handle it. So I'm not trying to get away from your question. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're a little full at the adjacent schools to be able to have a viable option that we could really consider, but I could relook at it for sure.
It's just good for the public to know, why we're.
They're all good questions.
And the growth of what we share with the facilities committee all the time is the growth is the 70-81 corridor. That's where all the growth is. So anywhere in there, you are pretty well full.
You can go to the next slide. Okay, next up is the Clear Spring Middle High School project. In past EFMPs, we've identified the need for middle high school projects somewhat generically. This year's plan focuses on a specific secondary school renewal project at the Clear Spring Middle High School campus. The campus has enough land to allow us to build additions and renovate some of the existing structures built in the 70s, and includes seat capacity that could reduce overcrowding in the schools in the center of the county to the east of Clear Spring. Sort of the top part of that L that Jeff just mentioned on the west side of town where there's a lot of growth, possibility of taking some of those students into the Clear Spring district if that's what the board chose to do. The availability of land, building on a site we already have, also allows the project to move forward a little quickly and at a lower cost because we don't have the cost of obtaining land. As proposed, the school would be about a 238,000 square foot building and have seat capacity for 1,500 middle and high school students. This is still out there. These aren't hard numbers. As we get closer to the actual project, these will all be refined. It'll take about 2.5 to 3 years of phase construction to complete the project. We'll start with a feasibility study, and it'll be done to determine the best mix of the reuse of existing facilities and new construction. Our current thinking on how this project will be phased is kind of interesting. We would demolish the middle school building on that site, which is a multi-level, semi-open classroom building that really doesn't meet academic or accessibility code requirements. The high school building we'd leave intact and operational during this phase. Yeah, I probably should have said this first, but we would move the middle school students before we would demolish. But the plan now would be to move them to the space we have at Hancock Middle Senior High during construction. This will provide the best possible and least disruptive educational environment for those students and make use of the seat capacity that exists at Hancock while saving the cost of bringing relocatables, in this case, to your point, Mr. Burkett, on this project.
I have a question.
Sure.
What's going to happen to the teachers from the middle school? Are they also going to be going to Hancock to handle the
So
extra?
I'll probably open by saying there's a lot we haven't touched on and figured out yet. A lot of HR issues to think about, timing of the school day in terms of transporting students that would be at Clear Spring to Hancock and back and so forth. So there's a lot of things yet to study on this topic. My initial gut would be that, yes, the teachers would be asked to teach from Hancock during that construction phase. And you know, I would defer, again, a lot of things you have to figure out, but we'd work with the principals and with Dr. Wilcox to think about if we have some attrition during that period. For instance, we've got a handful of retiring teachers at Clear Spring Middle. Would we need to fill those positions right away? Could we hold them in the budget because we have smaller class sizes at Hancock? We could merge them. I wouldn't see us creating two houses at Hancock. I would see middle school being Hancock and Clear Spring Middle School students together in merged classrooms. So we may have some efficiency in terms of staffing during that model. But then making sure that we keep those FTEs in the budget so they can be restored at Clear Spring when the new middle school opens.
Right, yeah, we're looking at this, you know, at that 20,000 foot level at this point, and as we get closer, a lot of those questions are going to resurface, and we're going to we have a lot to figure out moving forward, and we will. So after we demolish the middle school, we construct a new high school wing along with new core spaces that can be shared by both the middle and high school students and staff when the whole building is complete. So things like, again, a cafeteria and a kitchen, we wouldn't need two of those, we just have one. Gymnasium, we may have a competition gym and an auxiliary gym, maybe reusing the existing gym at the high school. Media center, administration spaces, et cetera. So once the new wing is completed, high school students would move from their current high school into the new wing, and then we'd start work on renovating the existing high school to become the new middle school wing of the new building. So you'd have the middle school and the existing high school, right? You'd have a core space in between, and then a new high school wing when we're all said and done. So once that renovation is complete in 2032, we'd bring the middle school students back from Hancock, and the estimated cost for the project is steep, but it's what it takes to build something like this is $147 million. As I stated earlier, the project will also have the potential to offer enrollment relief to schools to the east of Clear Spring. Just as important, it's going to replace two aging buildings with a single building at a lower cost than constructing two new facilities separately. And it's going to lower the cost of operations, especially with those efficiencies of not having two of everything as we operate the building. And we hope it would help to start the revitalization of secondary education facilities in the county. The last two projects are elementary schools number 2 and 3. These have been in the plan for some time. Again, they're located in the area where there's growth. And we'd seek to construct these two new schools. One would replace Fountaindale and Potomac Heights. Another would replace Greenbrier and Old Forge elementary schools. As currently planned, both schools would be around 83,000 square feet and house 688 students. Again, they're out in time. We could make them larger if enrollment called for it. So right now, we're just aiming at that same size as Downsville Pike, a 4-round school. The projects would be staggered to occur 2 years apart and open in 33 and 2035 respectively. The cost in today's dollars would be similar to Downsville Pike, around $52 million. The consolidation and replacement of these schools will lower the cost again of both construction and operations compared to renovating or replacing the 4 schools individually. So we believe that these 5 projects address both capacity needs and renewal and replacement of our aging facilities.
This slide highlights our systemic renovation needs within the county and the ages of specific systems we plan to submit for approval in the FY27 CIP. And it also highlights our anticipated systemic renovation projects over the following 8 years.
So I think to close, we say it annually twice. We will update this annually. While I think this is a good example of the shift and the change, the ebb and the flow, this year's report is not largely different from last year's report, except that the buildings are phased differently. The projects are in different order. And probably the largest change is that we've, in the previous report, named a middle high school project generically, and we have now specifically targeted that to the Clear Spring project. And again, with your pending approval at the business meeting in 2 weeks, we will send this report down to the Interagency Commission on School Construction as is required by June 30th, and it will become the basis of our 5-year capital request that you will see in September. And staff is happy to handle any other questions the board members may have.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Going back to the Clear Spring Middle Senior High School, it sounds great, and obviously make very compelling arguments why we should be doing it. But just looking at it logistically and reasonably from a budget standpoint, if the estimated cost in today's dollars is $147 million and roughly 80-20 state local split, that means we have to front $31 million and the state has to front $116 million. Given the budget crisis that we've just heard about in the news at the state level, and the fact that $31 million is almost 10% of our current year's budget, the one that we just approved, does that seem realistic? And again, I don't necessarily dispute the need for the project. It just seems like this is something that you spent a hell of a lot of time on in the middle of creating a 300-page document. Did we waste our time doing all that?
I would say the answer definitely is no. And in talking with staff at the IAC, and Mr. Donahue, the executive director, works on a regular basis with members of the General Assembly about increasing state capital improvement dollars. And the common thread through all of that is you got to tell us what you need so that we can advocate for with the General Assembly. And so I think, I had this discussion down at the county office today with Jill Baker, Director of Planning, is that unfortunately construction costs have just, skyrocketed. I probably said this at a previous meeting. The cost of the Downsville Pike Elementary is greater than the cost in 2018, my first year when I started here in 2008. It's greater than the cost to build Rockland, Mogginsville, and Pangbourne, 3 5-round elementary schools that opened all in the same year for roughly $45 million, and 1 4-round school now is $52 million. So that's been the nature of the cost of construction, and unfortunately, the state has also, we can talk at length about what's happened with capital funding, and that our capital allocation from county government is the same as it was in the year 2000, but the state hasn't done any better. So unfortunately, the state is creating a snowball type issue where the infrastructure is now ahead of them, whether you talk about it from a county level or a state level. Really, collectively, it's their responsibility to keep up and maintain school facilities, and they've created a huge snowball, and now it's a nut too big to crack. And because the dollars just are not there, but we still have to continue to identify what our needs are. We will continue to adjust and make updates to this plan as we have. I think it's never been the same. I think in my 8 years in the current seat, these plans continue to ebb and flow and adjust based on what we see as available dollars. But we also get a plan down, and we then can have conversations with the county CIP committee about what they think they can do, and also have discussions with the IAC. I mean, we've started to sort of nudge them a little bit on what do you think you could give on a project of this nature. Unfortunately, what happens with our peers in other counties is they often take whatever the state's going to give and they keep on going based on whatever their plan is, and the counties pick up the rest. That's not a situation that I think we can expect Washington County to be in, and that's not our expectation, but we need to continue to let our funding partners know what the needs are within the school system.
Thank you.
We will continue to gladly do the work.
Yeah.
It says for the Clear Spring project, not in local fiscal year CIP. Have you discussed that with them, or?
Go ahead, Chad.
Yes, sir. It was submitted in last year's CIP. It just wasn't shown in their current.
showing it.
Yeah, they're not showing it. We've submitted it. However, it just was not shown in their current funding model. But again, we're adjusting the schedule, and we're going to bring it back as this is what we would need.
The county CIP committee recommended it to the commissioners on further years out than what we had it in the plan. They kicked it out. So it was in REFMP.
Have it in there now.
Correct. It was in REFMP last year. I can't remember year-wise how it falls, but the county kicked it out even further than what we presented it last year. We rejuggled our products, or our projects. We had School 2 coming first.
Right.
After Downsville, we had School 2.
That's what I was going to say, yeah, 'cause we had kind of
and we
planned
don't currently have land for School 2, so that's a challenge. So we're not ready to kick off School 2. Knowing what the enrollment projections are in the West End, we moved Jonathan Hager way up. It was behind the middle high school project, if I remember correctly. So we've juggled the products around to fit enrollment projections and pressures, and also we think potentially the Jonathan Hager project coming next is more financially feasible for the county, and gives them a little window between the Downsville project and a larger project. At 24 million, let's assume it's got some inflation. Let's say it comes up to 27, 28 million. The county's lift on that, if it can be fully funded, if all the enrollment numbers are there and the project can be fully funded, I'm spitballing, but the county's lift might be 6 million, let's say, over a 2-year cycle. So that should work within their funding allocations.
And Mr. Evans, I just wanted to add to what Jeff said too, that the reason we ask is so that it becomes visible. And you never know when, the Built to Learn Act came out a few years ago and pumped like $2 billion. Unfortunately, the small counties got the scraps, and most of that money went to large counties. But you don't know that we don't know that the state legislature might not look at the backlog of construction and decide to do something similar to that, where maybe it's a little more equitable and the smaller counties are able to do some stuff too. So that's why we ask. We're under no illusion that it's all just going to come to us. I mean, we get that, but if we don't ask, we won't get it at all, right? So, I mean, that's the thought.
In big numbers, when we think about the Built to Learn Act, and I'm spitballing my memory off the top of my head, the 7 largest counties got 83% of the money, and 17 counties got 17%.
$1.75 billion for the big counties.
It was crazy money.
$50 million for the small counties.
That vote them all in.
It was, yeah. But without it, we wouldn't have been able to do Downsville. So, I mean, there is that too. So.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anybody else? This meeting is adjourned.